Three, two, one. We are now live. Google Hangouts on air. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Paul Hill. I am an E-Extension Fellow studying the Maker Movement, and I work for Utah State University as an Extension Assistant Professor, overseeing awesome programs in 4-H youth development in Washington County, Utah. And I'm joined today by my friends and mentors, Dave Francis from the Utah 4-H State Office, and Kevin Riva from Utah State University IT on campus, and a lifelong maker. And so I've sent out a link to our E-Extension Maker community and several other interested individuals who want to join us. And so what we've got today is just a discussion on the Maker Movement, specifically a kind of a discussion here with Utah educators. But you can ask questions in the Q&A by just posting the question. It'll come to me, and so what I can do is then highlight that, and then we can answer your question. And so I have no problem. We have a list of questions that we're going to discuss today and go over, and mainly these are questions that people have emailed me with, asked me at conferences, and I figure, what better way to answer these questions but with some knowledge, people smarter than I, and recorded live here, so that for those viewers who aren't viewing now can then check out the live recording, which will be on learn.eextension.org, and then also here on this Google Plus page. So thank you again for joining us. We're gonna start off by I'd like to introduce Dave Francis and Kevin Riva, and then have them talk about their roles in the Maker Movement here in Utah.
Well, thanks, Paul. So what I do, I work for the State 4-H office, which is up in Logan, Utah, at our land grant, and I am responsible for the overall STEM mission mandate as well as our 4-H military partnerships. And so about 2012, we got an invite to be involved in a pilot program for a Making the Future project out of Cognizant. Cognizant was trying out some new ideas around Maker and wanted to get youth involved, and we were one of the states that was picked to be a pilot site. And before that time, I had seen Make Magazine, I had heard rumblings of a Maker Fair, but I wasn't fully entrenched and knew about the Maker Movement. But over time, I got to learn a lot more about this, and I began to embrace the Maker Movement as truly 4-H had started the Maker Movement 100 years ago. We just weren't calling it Maker. And it's an opportunity to engage kids, and especially new audiences, in some of the things we've already done, and bring new content, new ideas, and new makes or projects to our 4-H youth. It's an exciting time to be part of 4-H and the Maker Movement.
Hi, I'm Kevin Riva. My day job is Utah State University, but I'm a volunteer with the Cache County 4-H program, and I got involved. I've been a lifelong maker, I would say. As a kid, I took my toys apart, and I always had extra parts left over when I put them back together, and I enjoyed doing things like that and modifying, and had a son who was interested in this kind of stuff and looked for opportunities for him and other kids. And I happened to hook up with Dave because I read an article about how Utah 4-H was getting involved in the Maker Movement and that Cognizant. So I gave Dave a call, and he mentored me and helped me establish a club called Cache Makers. I'm a co-founder of Cache Makers with a friend of mine, and it's a fun STEM club of maker and makerspace here in Cache County.
Well, thank you. I want to start off by the question that I get often by 4-H people at the county level, state level, and 4-H. They want to know what does a maker activity, what does a maker program look like? And we'll start off with just the activity. So, what can a county do to join the Maker Movement? What type of activity or event can they host in order to join the Maker Movement, Dave? And then Kevin.
Yeah. So what we started with is before there was a Maker Movement of any size, we started with a lot of 4-H robotics, and a lot of states did 4-H robotics. But when the Maker Movement came on board, we began to realize that there is an amazing way to teach our science abilities or our STEM abilities, the process skills that 4-H has identified, with a variety of makes or maker projects. So this could be everything from making a tote bag, making a LED that lights up and is a game, foxhole radio. Whatever a project is that kids can make became a maker project. And the coolest part I find about maker projects is I encourage kids to make the project and then showcase it. That's an important part of being a make, is that you showcase and show others what you made so they can learn, and you get that sense of mastery by demonstrating this is what I made and this is why it's cool, this is where I can learn from. So it doesn't really matter the project, whether it's a sewing project, a robotics project, a wood project. It's that you're making something and getting kids involved in the process of making something.
And I'll add to what Dave said with the 4-H. 4-H is a natural for making, right? We've been doing making in 4-H forever. I was part of 4-H as a kid. I was in a ceramics program with my sister in a small little town in southern Nevada, and we did gardening, which is making, right, and things like that. So I believe I don't have anything more to add to what Dave said as far as how you get it involved, other than 4-H is a natural. Extension is a natural. There's already curriculums, whether it be woodworking, the robotics, the electronics, the sewing, the art, some of that stuff. There's lots of activities already there.
So just want to be clear, to join the maker movement, do you need to know how to program a Raspberry Pi? Does it involve technology? Do you need highly
skilled volunteers?
What?
Highly skilled volunteers? Not at all. I mean, what's cool, what I found about the maker movement is it can be as simple as making a sound sandwich, which is just a couple of jumbo craft sticks and a rubber band. We made a musical instrument, and now let's spin off on what we learned about the make. And it can be very high-tech to be wearables and amazing things like that. But what I love most is the intersection of our traditional 4-H makers. Paul, I think of Larry down in your county, an older grandparent figure who loves to sew, and that she's a mashup with these young teens that are saying, teach me how to sew, and I want to show you how I'm going to add an LED screen to this to make a messenger bag that says a message and lights up. And I love that mashup of doesn't have to be high tech, but let's take some of our skills and our people that have a good artisan skill for sewing and cooking and gardening and mash them up with these kids and create projects that are out of this world, literally.
Yeah, speaking of out of this world, Kevin, can you talk to us about the project that you did with the cash makers and the balloon satellite?
Yeah, I love engaging hands-on activities that get kids excited, and I found when you can get any kid involved in a hands-on project, their excitement they love drills, they love saws, they love whatever it is. And so I had this idea that I wanted to get girls involved in STEM, and I wanted to provide an activity for them that was didn't include boys with them, right? I wanted them to be able to blossom on their own without that competition. So I had this idea was I teamed up with a company called Ardusat, who sells these space kits, right? And they actually have an Arduino inside, and they have sensors like a barometer, a magnometer, a compass. They're little sensors. You can see them here in this bag. Well, maybe, yeah. And there's a temperature sensor and a luminosity and infrared. I kind of knew what those meant, but they've got everything that you can do. And what I wanted these girls to do is have an experience playing with this stuff. But I needed an activity that made it really, really fun. So we put them on a high-altitude balloon. It's a weather balloon, right? Blew it up with a tank and a half of helium. Let it go with these payload boxes that were about, oh, yeah, I can show you right here. Right there, there's a payload box right there. And you might be able to see inside. Let's see if I can get the light right. I don't know. I'm kind of in a bad spot. But anyway, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's an Arduino in there. There's an HD video camera. Here's the Arduino back here. We've got a GPS right here in the roof and a data logger. There's this little chip that's a data logger, and we wired it up, and these guys give you diagrams on how to do it. And the girls soldered, here's our sensors. They're on these boards. Here's one board. Here's our infrared sensor and our temperature sensor and our luminosity. Then on the other side, we've got our board that has our accelerometer and gyroscope and magnometer and compass. And here's our ultraviolet sensor, right? They're on the outside. The girls actually soldered these. They had no experience soldering. And they did okay, right? We had to fix a few things, right? But the fun thing is they did it, and they loved it. These girls had never done this before. There's our HD camera sticking out. And the parachute, and what's left of the balloon after it burst at 115,000 feet. So we set this thing up expecting it to get around 100, maybe 105, and it went to 115,000 feet. Came down in Wyoming, and we went over and found the thing. And then we took the data, and the girls were mission specialists. They had to choose, once they played with all the sensors before launch, in teams of 2, they chose what sensors they were going to be mission specialists. So they worked on hypotheses and questions. Then they were able to take the data that we got from that flight and analyze it and then do a presentation. And what's cool, I challenged the girls now to go to their schools and ask their science teachers if they could do presentations and talk about their experience. And the science teachers are, 1, blown away, and 2, so darn excited. It's now been presented at least 7 times in schools, and more still in the works. And what it's done for us, now the kids are all asking their teacher how they can do that.
Wow. So we actually, as you were showing us all that, we had a question from Ann Bose, and I believe she's in Michigan. She said, what's the name of the kit that you used? And she expressed that they did a balloon as well. But what was the name of the kit again?
It's ARDUSAT. So it's ARDUSAT. ARDUSAT.com. And so they have kits, and they kind of target schools, and they have kits, a whole bunch of kits for schools and stuff and various things. You can buy a single kit, or you can buy the full package, that supports lots of youth.
Oh, excellent. So what I'm going to do here is in the showcase section, I'm going to post a link to ARDUSAT, and we'll showcase that for our viewers who are participating at home or work or wherever they may be, and I will show this item so that they can get a link to the website there. So thinking about the maker movement as a whole, stepping back and just looking at the maker movement outside of 4-H, what can 4-H add to the maker movement? What do we have that would make the maker movement better for youth, and for that matter, adults and people who want to engage youth in STEM education?
So, well, 2 things. Yeah, Ann is actually in Missouri, and I think that we do need to figure out ways to do an online showcase. MakerCamp.com did one this summer. I think 4-H could actually figure out a way to do a better online showcase. One thing that we've talked a lot about is, where does the 4-H fair world intersect with the larger maker movement? So what can 4-H do to help showcase at the county and state fair kids' maker projects? And so that's one way that we can be better about this, is showcasing at the county fair what it means to be a maker and showcase these maker projects. And then the other thing that 4-H has, I think, really done well, is we have trained leaders and a system that we can help other makers with the leadership structure we have, the team leadership component, as well as adult volunteer leaders, how to get people trained, onboarded, and into a program with the youth protection, the youth development essential elements, parts of that to better help makers work with youth. We found sometimes, and this is more of a general STEM volunteer issue, is sometimes our more STEM content specific volunteers don't know how to work with youth. And so regardless of whether 4-H or not, we can help provide those STEM content volunteers an opportunity and skills to better work with youth.
Thank you, Dave. What let's shift to resources. So we've talked about the different type of events we could do, whether it's an after-school program, a Maker Fest like they do in they've done in Virginia, and then one thing in my county we've done Maker after-school programs, as well as kind of a mini Maker Fair, participating in the mini Maker Fair at Barnes and Noble, kind of doing a Maker section at our county fair, and then doing Maker camps in the summer. But what are some resources that a lot of times people just they're on board to do Maker, they want to do a Maker activity, but they're wondering what are some resources? Where do I get that kit? Or where do I get that supplies? They see a cool make and they're like, where do I get that? How do you learn how to build that? And what are some resources we can point them to?
Kevin, do you want to talk about how when we started with Kevin, he saw the press release about Maker Fair, and it was just great timing. We just found out about Maker Camp. So Kevin, do you want to talk about how you started with a really simple Maker Camp kit, and then it evolved into Cache Makers from there?
Yeah, so Dave called me after him and I had the initial discussion about Google's Maker Camp. Okay, so I would definitely check that out. And we were able to get the kit that goes along with that Maker Camp. And Maker Camp is like a week long or 10 days, and they have a different activity each day, right? And you don't have to do them all, but you can do some of them. And in that kit, I think there was an Arduino, a Raspberry Pi, a squishy circuit kit, some other things. There was the thing to take a photo and put it on a T-shirt yourself.
Oh, Lumi shirts, yeah.
Lumi shirts, yeah, that was cool. That was a fun one. And so I recruited. I had my son who wanted to do it, and I had 3 kids of my own, and they recruited some friends who wanted to do it. We just did it at my house and had some fun, and some things worked well and other things didn't work so well. The hardest part was summer schedules. Anyway, and I saw the fun that these kids had doing this kind of stuff, and some of them had never done this before, right? In one experience of building model rockets, I had kids who had never used a can of spray paint before, and I couldn't imagine that. I didn't even believe that was possible. My kids have been using spray paint since they were old enough to hold the can. But anyway, that worked very, very well, and that got me excited. And that just pumped me up to try to do something else. And it was an opportune moment when a colleague of mine that has his own company called and had seen a Facebook post about what I had done and says, I want to get involved. And him and my kids were going to start it out, but between the recruitment of other kids, we hit capacity in a week and blossomed it. And then other adults came forward who wanted their kids involved, so we convinced them to lead other after-school groups. And so it just took off from there.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Paul, so I think MakerCamp.com is one of the best starting points for people to get involved with trying to understand what a simple make activity would look like. And then from there, look at your existing 4-H curriculum, the junk drawer robots, I just yesterday dropped off the Magic of Electricity kit to the Cache Makers space. So look at those existing 4-H curriculums and then start expanding your scope. And as you expand your scope to look at MakeZine and Instructables, 2 great websites, know that what they are good at is presenting a make. What they are not good at is helping you craft a youth development experience. So you'll have the make on Instructables, and then you've got to figure out a way to how do I then, that's the do part, but how do I reflect and then apply to the life skills that we learned about through that process, either a STEM content or a more general, how did we collaborate, how did we redesign, how did we work together to make this project happen? Anne has a great question and point about group projects versus individual projects. I have done both. Both projects have gone where we've identified that each kid will work on their own make, and we'll identify a giant make that everyone will work together. For example, one of our camps, we did a residential camp, and we had individual makes with like the Lumi shirts that Kevin Reeve mentioned, and then we had a group make, which was making a raft. And this idea that making a raft was exciting for them. And we had a big pile of junk. We had buckets, and we had cardboard tubes and wood and bottles and milk jugs, and kids could grab from the junk pile and make their raft. And it was a great group project that they all felt proud of, and they had to identify, let's do the make, and then who's going to actually ride the raft on the pool for the big battle to try and sink the other boats. That was an exciting make for people. So it really was about trolling various websites to find out makes. The hardest part I found is if you're doing maker projects with a group, is as you source materials, you've got to consider lead time if it's materials that require any kind of electronics or switches. If you have 10 to 20 kids doing the project, I've tried to go to your local craft stores, your Radio Shacks. They may have one or two of the components you need, but I need 20. So as you're thinking about that maker project, think about what online resources are you going to have to order ahead of time and get here before you actually do that. Because having twice now, I've been in a bind where I've had a project a group wants to do, and it's the day before, and I can't source. And I live in the Greater Salt Lake area with lots of options, and it was hard to source the quantity I needed quickly. So be thinking about that as you do your projects.
And one thing I will add is in doing a lot of maker camps and after-school maker programs, when we're doing, for instance, a soldering project and there's 80 different components that you've got to solder onto a circuit board, order an extra kit. Order it well enough in advance that you have time to solder it up and get with your key volunteers so they have an opportunity to do the project first. I have a staff assistant, excellent master of sewing, but every time they do an activity, whether it's just a bag or a purse or a headband or whatever it is, they always sew it together first, go over any issues that they may have, and get it lined out so that they can. It's a way for them to anticipate issues or problems and what's going to be difficult and where they're going to need the most help. And so I do the same thing when it comes to soldering projects and just ordering a couple extra kits just in case, and then having extra resistors and capacitors on hand in case someone forgets that they're polarized and they put the negative in the positive side and things like that. It's always good to have batteries and that kind of supply of items on hand. But running through the project in advance helps you anticipate the problems that youth are going to have, and then also helps you be a better facilitator as far as creating an inquiry-based learning environment where that their kids are going to struggle with this particular part of the project. So that helps you develop better questions and ways that you can help guide them through solving the problem on their own, rather than figuring out the solution and then telling them, oh, by the way, when you get to page 6 on this project, you should you should do this instead of this because I solved that problem already. But really, helping them kind of struggle and learn and maybe fail a little bit, I've seen is just a really beneficial tactic as far as preparing for a learning experience.
And Paul, I think the walkthrough ahead of time also helps you identify the bottlenecks, because what I found is sometimes there's a certain tool that everybody's going to have at once. So you're going to have enough of that tool so it doesn't create a bottleneck. But you may not have to have 20 of that tool if it's something that people can use at different times in the project. And so it's knowing what tools you're going to have ahead of time in addition to the supplies is really helpful in looking for those bottlenecks of what you think as an individual maker, you're like, oh, I can just grab my pliers, grab my wire strippers, but then all of a sudden when you have to have 20 of those because every kid is doing that at the same time, you really got to think that through ahead of time.
Yeah, and so what I've done is in the showcase, I've added the link to makercamp.com. I've also shared instructables.com that Dave referred to, and I've used great instructions. And then I've also linked to the Discover 4-H curriculum that has been developed by led by Stacy MacArthur in Utah, and really developed by agents and educators throughout Utah, as far as really great activities that youth can get involved in, and really kind of get them started in 4-H. In Utah, a lot of kids haven't heard of 4-H, and so getting them started with the first 6 lessons is has been a great opportunity for us. And so there's everything in there from different chemistry activities that are focused on forensics and spy camps to different like a spa camp or club where they can make their own lotions and soaps and things like that. So I have a link to the Discover 4-H curriculum, so I'd encourage you to check that out. We've got more coming. We've actually got some basic maker curriculum that we're going to be putting together. But again, it's not always so much about following, the curriculum to the T, but really kind of going through it yourself, anticipating some of the bottlenecks, and then helping the youth solve the problem and come up with creative solutions on their own. Moving on, where does STEM fit into the maker movement? A lot of people, have said that the maker movement is the answer to the skills gap, to the STEM education national crisis. Other people have said there's really not a crisis. If more kids have STEM skills, then it's just going to drive down the wages of scientists and mathematicians and so forth. But where does STEM fit in the maker movement? If I've got a STEM program, why should I be doing the maker movement? Why should I be involved in the maker movement?
Paul, the thing that stuck out to me once when my first maker fair, we brought our 4-H teen ambassadors there to the program. And I asked Mark from Cognizant, I said, Mark, what is it? Why are you investing in maker movement? Because there's a whole host of programs that Cognizant could have invested in. And they're great programs, the FIRST Robotics, the Odyssey of the Mind, all those projects and programs are out there already. Why maker? And he said, it's not about proficiency, it's about passion. And what he described is how the industry is lacking people that are not proficient, but that are creative, passionate problem solvers. And he felt like to attract the most creative, passionate problem solvers, he's got to grab these makers, because those are the people that are creative and excited about that. Kind of what's interesting about this, and kind of facilitate one of the questions here in the chat, is when we did our first pilot project, we had a series of small makes, which everybody did, and that taught the basics of safety or skill development. But then we said, okay, we have a number of projects that you can pick from, and you tell us what you want to make, and that will be your big project, almost like your major for your week of Maker Camp. And then all these minor projects are what everybody does. And it was fun to see kids said, I really want to be able to work on making speakers for my iPod. I want to make a wood bench. I want to make a tote bag. And we came up with a list of 7 to 10 possible makes that they could pick from on day one, made sure we had the supplies there the next day for those kids to begin. And so what would happen is we'd bounce between existing skill building makes and then your passion make, the thing that you wanted to own, and that allowed for creativity, that it was completely your own project and let kids explore what they wanted to do. And that was a great way to do that. It's a little harder because of cost and facilitating, and also making sure you have staff that is familiar with each of the makes that kids could pick from, but it really worked out well. And it wasn't as cookie cutter as sometimes a Maker Camp can be if everybody buys the same kit. But even if everybody's working on the same project, like I remember marshmallow shooters, cheap, easy project. What I loved about that is just see if you give them options, and duct tape and the vinyl cutter, those kids can come up with a myriad of options within the same project that becomes customized and it becomes their project versus what the group does.
Thank you, Dave. I would like to kind of now talk about funding. We talked about you don't have to, the maker movement doesn't have to be all about technology. We do sewing, we do cooking, we make just arts, crafts, and things like that, in addition to soldering projects and robotics and all that. But really, where can people get supplies for maker activities? Where can we get, can you direct us to funding? Can you talk about, Kevin, kind of talk about how things got started with your maker space that you're involved in, and how things progressed? And where people can do to get started. We've talked about just different activities, but if they want to take it to the next level and seek some funding, where can they go, and what are some opportunities that are available?
So we started with that Google thing, and then once we started our next program, finding the space, right? Either funding for space or finding a space that we could use was the next step, and we were able to find the local Chamber of Commerce had some unused space. that was not desirable for offices, but was perfect for making. Right? It was kind of like a clubhouse. Wasn't the best thing, but it worked for us, and it was fun, and the kids loved it. Then I just got this whim. I thought, you know, I need soldering irons, I need hand tools, I need this stuff. So, and I am a terrible fundraiser. I hate it. I hate asking people for money. But what I did is, through email, I reached out to Harbor Freight. I reached out to a company called Hako that makes soldering irons. I says, I want to teach kids how to solder, and I need your tools to do it, your soldering irons. Would you be willing to donate some? And this is what I want to do with it. And only got turned down once of 5 or 6 different national companies that I approached, and including local. And you'll find that that local hardware stores and others, when they hear that you're doing making and you can present them with some ideas, because even though you're doing electronic projects, right, you still need saws, you need hot glue, you still need scissors, and you need snips, and you need screwdrivers, right, for that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't even be afraid to approach the local manager of the Lowe's store or the Home Depot. I haven't done that yet, even though one of the parents says, hey, I've been talking to one of those stores, and I know the manager, and they're willing to help, right? We haven't approached him yet because we haven't identified the specific need. So that was a thing. And then we looked for grant opportunities, and Dave helped us with 2 grant opportunities that we were successful with.
One thing I've done here is I've highlighted in the showcase the Lowe's community grant corporate giving link, as well as Home Depot, their community action grants. And so these are grants that range from, you know, a couple thousand to $5,000 that you can ask really for anything at their store, and you supply a bill of materials and things that you need, as well as, you know, the amount. And if you can get in touch with their store manager and let them know that you're applying for that, they'd like you to have a contact at the store, and then you can apply for this type of funding. Utah has been successful in getting some funding and through a partnership with Cognizant, which has been tremendous for getting the Maker movement started in several counties. And then the funding that Kevin has received in Cache County has been through our state, the state of Utah, through our Department of Workforce Services, which has funded staff as well as you know, a building makerspace to hold after-school programs. And as well as summer camps, and then of course all the supplies, 3D printers, computers. What other things has that grant funded, Kevin?
A lot of supplies, including some furniture to get. You know, we needed work tables, right? You need like industry shop tables where kids can do things on, and stuff like that. It's provided us the ability to buy the kits that we use in our program, and funding to make sure that no kid is turned away because of family inability to pay. So if a family qualifies for free or reduced school lunch, we're able to offer our projects pretty much at a significant reduced cost, if not zero cost. I wanted to go back on one other possible funding. Both Walmart and Sam's Club have these little community funding opportunities, right? And what I found about Maker is it's a new kind of, not fad is not the word, but it's new, and it's STEM, and you hear our leaders and companies talking about STEM. For example, Walmart, Sam's Club, Lowe's, they all need STEM workers too, right? Their corporate offices rely on highly qualified STEM workers who run their computer systems, who build their data networks, who make it so that they're successful in what they do, as well as data scientists. And so they get this, and they like these because they're new. They're different than what they've been funding in the past. While they have been funding things for many different worthy organizations that are helping families and people, they also can see how this helps families and people.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's certainly something that I've noticed with different partners in my community, is everyone's willing to get involved, whether they can give their time as a volunteer, or get their youth involved, or funding and resources. It's, on a weekly basis, people are trying to give me old tools, from wire cutters to, oh, I have these extra LEDs lying around I haven't done anything with. But there's so many opportunities to get this funding. I've never, and a plug for Home Depot and Lowe's, I've never had a youth involved in my 4-H program who wanted to build something and do it as a 4-H project that needed support as far as some supplies that they couldn't afford, maybe materials that a lot of times that they're doing as a service learning project or a citizenship project in the community, whether maybe it's an Eagle Scout project, and have gone to Lowe's or Home Depot with a bill of materials and on a budget and saying, hey, can you help me out with this? And every time I've sent a kid in that direction, they've come back and saying, hey, they gave me everything for this project. And really, a lot of it was just under $100, but they were very generous. And so a lot of it just goes back to asking. So as we wrap up, what are some final thoughts, Dave, that you'd like to, and Kevin, like to say about the maker movement in Utah and what we've learned, and really kind of where do you see it going in the next few years?
So a couple things. First off, I feel like what we've learned is you start small and you keep building, and it will get bigger from there. But don't start. Kevin has an amazing, I would consider it the Cadillac of maker spaces for Utah. It's impressive, and to answer your question, he doesn't. It's not as much an adult maker space yet. We do some adult training, but it's not. It's dedicated to youth at this point. And so start small and then grow the maker space and the program from there. Don't forget the power of teens. We have amazing teens in our programs, and they are very effective and figuring out things. I've worked with the teens in many maker spaces, and they are the ones that I'm looking to say, can you help the older adults in the room figure this out? Because you guys are much more savvy about what's going on, whether it be coding or understanding how to find resources online. That's good. The last thing I would say is don't think that you have to have a ton of money and a ton of space to do this. One of my favorite maker websites right now is the PBS Design Squad, which is simple stuff. It's popsicle sticks and kite string and rubber bands, and you get kids making. And they're effective, fun maker projects to introduce the same STEM abilities. So don't think that you have to have a 3D printer and lots of LEDs and soldering irons. Start really small with stuff that you can find around the house, and then build your program from there. And as to where it's going next, we keep getting more and more questions from adults and kids alike saying, how can we get this program going in our community? And it's taken many forms in Utah. It's taking the form of trailers, after-school programs, it's maker spaces. Everybody's kind of taking their own twist for what works to their community. So I think it's just going to keep growing for us.
I see that there is even opportunities, and many 4-H counties are already doing this, is teaming up with middle schools. Middle school is the right place to introduce this and be successful with middle school kids. So after school programs, the nice thing about middle schools is they have space to do these projects. Libraries as well are wanting to get into this, and the library here in Logan wants to team up with this and has for one time, and they were going to originally give us space, but there were other factors that prevented that from happening, so we had to find our own in the end. But they're still working with us on projects, and we're doing projects with them because they have space and they also have some resources. And to reiterate what Dave said, and it kind of goes back to our discussion about individual projects versus team projects. I've even found that with the groups I've been working with for over 2 years now, that even though they may be individual projects, we team kids up in at least teams of 2, and sometimes it happens to be 3, right, who sit next to each other and they mentor each other. And you find that even in these younger middle school kids, natural mentors appear. It's in their DNA. They want to mentor. And those that we see that in, we encourage that. And I have this girl who's 11 years old who got there early one day for this balloon project, and I showed her. She wanted to go, what are we doing? And her and my daughter went over, and I showed them what we were doing, and as other girls came in, she ran to me. She says, can I help them do it now? Can I help them? And I said, yes. And so those two divided up and then started teaching the girls what they had learned. So look for natural mentor opportunities and look for those things, because it's hard for one adult or a couple of adults to help all the kids, but you will find there will be natural things that come out, and kids will gravitate to certain areas, and they want to help. So that's big of our problem. When we were done with this balloon launch and we were reflecting with parents and others about it, I had a question at the end. I says, I want to do another balloon, and I want to have a new set of girls do the balloon. How many of you would be willing to come back and be mentors for that project? Guess how many hands went up? All of them.
Well, thank you, Kevin and Dave. I have highlighted in the showcase section a link to the pbskids.org design squad. And one thing Dave pointed me to was their stuff spinner. It's a pretty neat tool. It just you check box the items that you have on hand, the things that you have at home or at the extension office, 4-H building, makerspace, and click Stuff Spinner, and it spits out all the different projects that you can do with what you already have. And so I'd say check that out. I have also linked to makerfair.com. Check that out. It's if you have the funds and you can go, I encourage you to go to the Bay Area Maker Fair, or some of those that Maker Media hosts. They have the World Maker Fair in New York, but there's several others. But then there's also mini Maker Fairs that are dotting the globe, and so search through that site, click through that site, and look for different mini Maker Fairs. There's probably one in your area. Barnes & Noble had a lot of success with their getting people on board with their Maker Fair or mini Maker Fairs at their stores, and no two were alike, but it was a first year, and I thought it was rather successful bringing makers together. But look how you can get involved in that and showcase some of the work that you're doing and some of the mastery that the youth are developing in STEM education through the Maker program, and then try to visit one, but look through the pictures. I mean, it's definitely a glimpse into the future, I think. And then lastly, I've linked to our eExtension Maker Community page as part of my eExtension Fellowship this year. I have started curating a lot of resources on this website. It's extedtechs.org/makers, and I would encourage you to visit there. Leave a comment if there's something that you know about that I've missed. I'm sure there's a lot of it, but I've gotten a lot of comments on Twitter, and so I've been able to compile a lot of these resources, like, for instance, the Makerspace Playbook. So if you are going to start a Makerspace, then there's a playbook that Maker put together to tell you all the resources you need if you've got a small makerspace to a large makerspace or just a home makerspace. And so there's that resources. There's resources to curriculum. There's a list of suppliers like Adafruit, SparkFun, Makershed, where you can get a lot of these supplies that we're talking about, and purchase kits and then the tools that you need. And so, but please reach out to us on various social media, on this page, and here on Google Plus and this Hangout. And I look to do, if you have you're leading the Maker movement in your county, your state, I would love to talk to you. I would love to do more of these Hangouts where we can share the insight that we've gained through being involved in the Maker movement. So I just want to thank Dave Francis and Kevin Reeve for their time and just the value that they have brought to this discussion. We've had several viewers, we've had people asking questions, and so we hope that we've answered all these. But what I'll do is I'll post this to learn.eextension.org. And I will link to all the different resources we've spoken about today, and that should be up in the next 24 hours. And so thank you for joining us today. Again, this is Paul Hill with Utah State University and eExtension, and I want to thank you for joining us and contributing and learning along with us. So I hope you can get the Maker movement going in your county. If you already have, keep it going and move it forward stronger each and every day. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul.